Well, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us for another one of our series we're dropping as we try and go down the Netflix route of podcasts and drop a whole season at once. And as we're recording this, the working title is Wow, Succession got here faster than I thought it would. And today I've got my dear friend Tim Harlow with me. Tim has not succeeded. He has not retired. He
I
is
haven't
not
succeeded in anything.
he hasn't succeeded in anything. That's awesome. Tim, thanks so
Great
much
intro.
thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
You bet. I'll
Yeah,
try to succeed somewhere.
there you go. Hey, take a minute and tell people who you are, your story, because man, I'm just learning every day. It's a big church out there, and a lot of people don't know a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. I found the same thing, William. Came here 31 years ago to a small church of about 150. Here is the south suburbs of Chicago, which is very unique. 80% ex-Catholic or current Catholic. A lot of blue collar, white collar mix. They're the Bears people that you used to watch on Saturday Night Live, and I couldn't love them anymore. I'm from Oklahoma. It was not my background, so it took me a while to figure out who this crowd was, and took me a while to help get this church transitioned into a place where it cared about the lost. But for the last 20 years, we've been on a first 10 years were rough, and the last 20 years have been a really, really fun ride.
And you've got a few more than 100 people now, right?
Yeah, a few more. Yeah.
So pre-pandemic, like, give me a
Yeah, eight or 9,000. Yeah, something like that.
9,000 over a few
Three
campuses.
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 Yeah, working on our fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, you were talking about opening a campus in a bar.
Yep.
And I think as we record this in Illinois, it's legal to go to a bar, but not to a church. So,
yeah.
So there you go. You kind of have to use
Yeah, that's actually not true because the Supreme Court overturned that whole thing. But so we are having services with a lot of social distancing. But yes, we will probably, we're going to be live streaming into the bar well before we actually start a campus in there. And it's a unique situation. I mean, the owner's a part of Parkview, and it's big. It's not really a bar. It's more of a banquet hall, but I'm excited about the model. That's one reason I won't retire yet, is because I want to help the church find new models. Our last campus cost us $12 million, and it's going great. I'm so glad we did it, but that's just not a viable model. So I really want the church at large to figure out, and obviously COVID is going to force that in a lot of directions, but I'm excited. I'm still excited about a bunch of stuff, even as a 59-year-old guy who's been here for 31 years.
So you're excited. You're the church is growing. You're enthusiastic. You're expanding. What in the world what did they say in the first session of counseling? So why are we here today?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about succession?
Well, I'll tell you how this makes me feel. Okay, counselor. The thing that probably rocked my world more than anything else was, maybe 5-6 years ago, I was with a friend, Roger Storms, out in Chandler, Arizona. He was 62. I was preaching for him that weekend, and he said, "Hey, man, I'm going to be looking for somebody. I think I'm done." And I was like, "Roger, he's such a great spiritual man, and he's done such a great job." And I'm like, 62, tell me about it, man. And his direct quote was, "I just don't think I can push the rock uphill anymore." And from that point, I'd seen Bob Russell step away earlier than I thought he would. I'd seen some other guys step away earlier than I thought they would. And I kind of started talking to myself and my eldership about, maybe it's not as far as I think I'm going to make it. I had this goal of making it 40 years, trying to follow in Rick Warren's footsteps. And David was king of Israel for 40 years. And, and that would have taken me to 67. And, I don't think 8 more years is going to be healthy for me or the church. And so I started looking at, some models, and I really became a student, thanks to you, especially of succession and what's going on. And knowing that we probably didn't have the person on staff, it made it a little bit of a different angle for us to take. And so we started looking at it. Our friend Kenton Beshore, my daughter's on staff out at Mariners, and I he mentored me in this whole process, and you helped him through that whole process. And I just kind of followed along in his timeline and started looking at what he was doing, and started talking to you, and started thinking and praying, and trying to get our leadership ready for the fact that 67 probably wasn't a reality. And if 65 is a reality, it's going to be different than it is now. It's going to have to be.
Well, first of all, Roger and Nancy, I think is his wife's name, right?
That's right. Yeah.
They are so close to Jesus, and they're doing such a good job. They handled that succession very, very well. We did some initial planning with them.
Yeah.
And, lots of fun, and
pushing the rock up the hill, man. I mean, that's what it is.
Thing, man. That's what I hear from so many guys that I get led into these conversations with. I still like preaching. I don't think I have the energy for all the other stuff, and that's a lot of the job.
Yeah.
And you guys broke some ground. We've been quiet about it to not make your church freak out, but I think when you guys came to us and said, "Can you help us walk this path?" It was like, this is probably a 10-year arrangement. I'm like, wow, never thought about 10-year, relationship for succession. And it's just been really cool to be able to take a long, slow walk together and see, not knowing where it ends or where the handoff is, but knowing that
it has been for us too, man. And you know how much, I hope you know how much you mean to me and my elders to help us walk through this thing, because I mean, in walks COVID-19, in walks all of these other things that are going on. I mean, we brought on a teaching pastor that is remote. Todd Clark's doing a great job, but he's remote, so it's a different kind of thing. And my job, we've morphed it multiple times along the way, but the end goal is that the church gets the best thing that it needs. And at some point, at this point, they're telling me, "Oh no, you're it, Tim. We need you." But at some point, they need a young leader. And now that we're, moving into this digital revolution thing, those of us whose VCRs are still flashing 12 o'clock, we're struggling a little bit with the whole deal. And it's got to be a thing where new solutions to the new problems are going to come from a new generation. And I really believe that's going to be important.
So tell me, I know, but I'd love for you to share what you can with people listening today. What in 2020 changed your view or outlook or pace around succession?
I mean, for one thing, the fatigue that everybody feels. I mean, I don't care if you're a 30-year-old senior pastor listening to, whoever you are, we all feel 2020 fatigue. And so you start getting fatigue, you start thinking, do I have it? Can I handle it? And I was getting to the point, I'm not there now, but I was getting to the point where I told my executive pastor and my team, I just don't think I'm okay, but there's not a lot of margin if something else breaks, if there's I mean, it wasn't just the pandemic, it was the political upheaval, it was the racial thing. I tried to do some things to bring racial justice, and of course, I got beat up for it. And if I would have said nothing, then I would have got beat up for it. And all of those things, they just fatigued us. So everybody's tired. And if you're tired and you're 60, almost 60, you're like, okay, if you're tired and you're 40, I would look at this as, okay, I'm excited about the new future, the new challenge. But dude, I've morphed so many times in my 30-year history as a senior pastor. I went to, we went to a mega church, and then we went to multi-site, and I mean, like I would just get something figured out, and then the world would change the model of what we were supposed to do. And to think about what that looks like going forward is quirky, because nobody knows what it is. And that doesn't energize me, if I can just be honest. I'm super type A. I love to solve problems. I'm all about that, but it doesn't energize me like it used to when I look over the horizon.
So you have done an amazing job at looking over the horizon at Parkview over the years. And when I set out to write this first book, oh gosh, almost 6 years ago now, 7 when we started thinking about it, the whole goal was just to make succession a legitimate conversation among
Mm,
pastors, because it used to be the dirty secret. Are
mm.
you seeing, as you look out on the horizon, is this a conversation that is getting normal?
It's so normal. It's the only thing anybody's talking about.
Really? Tell me about that.
I was at a gathering recently that was only pastors of large churches, and and we spent an enormous, and there were some of the the newbies in there. Kyle Eidelman was in there, Ashley Woolridge was in there, some of the ones who had taken over, and then there were a bunch of us that are the ones that are thinking about it, and the guys that were never thinking about it and always looked at everyone else like they were crazy were starting to think about it.
Mm,
So it's not. And again, I mean, I don't. Sure, part of that's 2020 and burnout, and we're going to get through all that. No, nobody's going to dump their church in the middle of this stuff that's going on. But I think at some point we also are spiritual enough as leaders of churches to go, I think maybe the best thing for the church would be if somebody led them. It might not feel like it at the moment, but it's time. It's like my kids at Christmas time. They've got kids. I've got my sixth grandchild on the way. They're starting to make their own Christmas tradition. and
mm,
and at some point, as the patriarch of this deal, I need to, like my father-in-law and my father and my parents and in-laws before me, I have to let them go do their thing. And I am a father figure to a lot of the people in the congregation, but I'm also a grandfather figure to a lot of people in the congregation. And I think the people that I'm the father figure for are going to be sad if and when I walk away. But the ones that I'm the grandfather to are going to say, yeah, we probably need to take this. I mean, it's scary to look at the average age of the church. And when I was 30 and they said the average age of the church is 10 years on both sides of you, I was like, all right, this is cool. When I was 40, it was great. As I hit 60, it's a lot of gray hair and no hair starting to show up out there. And I feel like I connect with the younger people, with my kids' generation and your kids' generation. I feel like I connect with them, but I you know I also believe a whole lot of things that I tell myself that probably aren't true, like how good looking I am.
hey, your kids' family traditions that they're establishing, is one of those traditions to do like 32 Christmas Eve services to celebrate?
that may be why they want to start their own, because by the time I get to Christmas, I'm a zombie. Yeah, I'm a nightmare.
I've
Yeah.
taken no calls from pastors the 3 days following Christmas. I'll just,
No,
takes 3 days
you
to get
should
out of the tomb. So,
you should just you should turn your phone off. That's the truth.
basically, it
Yeah.
will take you 3 days to get out of this tomb. Call me back on the 28th. So,
That's perfect. I will pray that you're resurrected.
oh,
Amen.
that's funny. Yeah. So one of the things that was kind of cool that we've discovered as we've done succession with you guys, and we now build it in when we do succession planning, is not just to ask, like one of the reasons that people will come up to you and say, "Oh, Pastor Tim, you're doing such a good job. You should just stay." Like that's what they told Brett Favre too. So,
Exactly.
but one of the reasons I see that happening is the people on the board are getting older too. And
That's
nobody
exactly right.
wants to admit that this is actually happening to all of us at the same time.
We are, and I love my guys for that. I mean, I love my eldership for that, because we've recognized that, we've pushed those buttons, we've got some things. Part of it is you got a team, and you're like, we want to accomplish some things, and there's some theological things we want to work out around women and leadership, and some other things that we want to really nail down before we're all gone. And so we really want to do that. But yeah, we're all friends, and we've all gotten older together, and we've brought some newer ones on. But the future is not from that group of people. That
Uh,
just can't be.
yeah, I'm already seeing your newest elder is amazing and part of that younger
Yeah.
generation. So
Yeah.
I, I don't say this really to brag on you guys, certainly not to brag on us, but more to encourage people who are watching this, because we're airing it in January, which is
Mm.
kind of, especially after 2020 now, we're sitting here filming in December, right before you start your 9 million Christmas Eve services.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm really, I'll tell you what I'm really kind of afraid of, and I hope I'm wrong. I'm afraid that by the time this airs, people are going to go, I thought it was all going to be over when 2020 went away.
Oh no. Yeah. I mean,
You're
Carrie
a
wrote a blog
major
about that
town.
today.
You know, January, February,
No.
March are going to be tough.
And hello, where am I at? In Chicago. Okay. Where January, February, and March are tough already. You
Yeah.
know, there's no sun going to shine until like May or June, and it's cold and it's nasty, and the vaccine's out, but I don't get it yet, and I'm not going to get it for a while. I'm anticipating that. I mean, the mental health thing is a big problem, and obviously it's not going to go away for a while. And some of the stuff that the addictions and the things we've learned to do or not do over the last year while we've been cooped up are not going to be easy to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I that's the reason I want to have this conversation, because some guys are out there and they're watching this in January and they're feeling down because they feel down. I ought
Hmm.
to be feeling up. I'm the hope dealer for the church. I'm supposed to be slinging hope,
Yeah.
and I feel that that's okay. And maybe it's time to be thinking long term. What one thing I've discovered with pastors that are doing well through this is they're really taking a much longer view of the problem
Mm.
than than just how do we contain it for this long? How do we open up 50 more seats? How do we, but like
Yeah.
the long view. So
Yes.
so let's go back to you looking on the horizon. When you think about the horizon and you look out there and you say, here are the things I'm recognizing in myself that tell me it's time to get serious about this conversation. What would you share that might be a help to people who are wondering, do I have a January hangover, or is it really time to be thinking about
Mm.
succession?
That's a great question, man. I've done burnout. I did that probably '03, and I didn't blow anything up, but I really hit that wall and had to get a lot of counseling and had to figure out what was going on. So I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that uh, and I have a counselor and a psychologist and all those kinds of things. Pretty comfortable with the fact that I can know where I'm at mentally and psychologically and spiritually. Those gauges that Hybels used to talk about. I mean, that's still really important to me. I can see that grid up in front of me, and I'm pretty good at knowing whether I'm just low or not. I mean,
Mm,
like you said, 3 days after, I'm gonna be low. My father-in-law is on his deathbed. I'm gonna be alone at Christmas time because my family's not doesn't live here. There's a lot of signs that I can read and I can go, okay, I get why I'm feeling that way. But the thing that struck me is, okay, if another problem happens and I don't have margin for it, where am I gonna go? And why don't I have
mm,
margin for it? And how can I solve that? And that's not a succession issue. It's a management issue. I mean, for me, for probably every pastor listening to me, it means, yeah, way to go. We all did a heroic job preaching way too many times and trying to do all these things to survive 2020. Now we need to get back to some reality. We need to bring in a teaching team. We need to do the things we need to do to balance those things out. So I think what the danger of this is I don't want somebody out there going, I'm a little low, I'm a little blue, I'm 45. Should I be thinking about secession? Yes, you should be thinking about succession, but you should be thinking about what that looks like 15 years from now, and what do you need to do to get to that point? Are
mm,
you developing? I mean, the guys that I know that are scaring themselves because they're leaving earlier than they thought, like they're going to leave by the time they're my age, are the guys who have the next person on staff and they know they have the next person on staff, and they've decided, like Dave Stone did, like Bob Russell did, to say, I'm not gonna lose this guy behind me because I hang on too long.
yeah.
So maybe that's where it's got to be. Maybe I've blown it in not doing that with video campuses. We didn't set that system up. So I would I don't think anybody should take burnout or a low spiritual point in their life as a, man, I need to get out of here, because you and I both know the stats are terrible on how many pastors quit and walk away too early. And but I wouldn't want anybody to hear this and think, well, maybe I should walk away sooner than I thought I was going to. What I would say is, let's make sure that we make the church be healthy. And if you think it's time to walk away, then go through the process, start talking to people, start getting other people involved, and talk about it so that as time goes on, you can make this a healthy transition. Because we've all seen people, do it the other way, and the church is decimated.
Well, and what you're saying reminds me of what I've told people over and over. And obviously I don't say it enough because people keep making this mistake. Never, ever, ever quit on Monday.
Yeah. Right.
Never quit on Monday.
Yeah.
Don't even call me on Monday. Like,
no.
I don't know if I've told you this before, but churches hire us to find their key staff, their pastor, that sort of thing. But that means people who might be thinking about a change will call us just to let us know what's up.
Yeah.
The number of times people contact us like that, like, oh, I think it might be time for a change. The number of times it happens on Monday is greater than all 6 other days combined. No lie.
I've not heard you say that, but I totally believe it.
I've written on it, like, biology people say Monday is not a good, you're getting back into your rhythm. You've been.
Don't cut your hair when you're pregnant. Everybody knows that. Don't cut your hair when you're pregnant, right? It's the same thing.
It's my friend Dave Ramsey says, the only people that get hurt on roller coasters are the ones who try and get out early.
And that's a timeshare analogy, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Just don't do it on Monday. And I stretch that metaphor to say, know what your Monday is. I'm not just talking about a day of the week, but what are you doing? Like for me, it's 3 p.m. Don't make any career decisions at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I stumble out of my office toward the coffee maker at 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm. And I agree.
I just, like, that's when Jesus died, 3 p.m. It's a tough hour.
You're right. You're right.
So
that's why I work out in the late afternoon. I don't understand people that work out in the morning. My brain works in the morning.
And, I talked to a friend of mine, Doug Ferguson was the exec pastor at Menlo Park Church for a long time. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy who recruited Ortberg from Willow. And I said, how in the world did you talk him into leaving Willow? And he said, oh, that was easy. I just watched the weather forecast for Chicago and I called Nancy every bad Monday. And
and that was a lot of them. Yeah.
And it worked. Know what your Monday is and don't decide then.
You in answer to your question though, there's another side of this too, and you're the one that brought it up. So, I'll give it back to you. But, famous pastors have said there's no retirement in the Bible. And, you're the one that pointed out to me that's not true. The high priest was supposed to do 25 years and be done and then work with the rest of the team, but turn over the leadership. And you can use any illustration you want. You go back to your Brett Favre illustration. You could go to any number of sports analogies, whatever you want to do. But there's a time that's probably before you think there's a time when you need to be stepping aside and turning over the leadership to somebody who's got better energy to push the rock up the hill. Doesn't mean you can't, still help and do whatever you need to do, like the high priest did, or go do that in another minute. I mean, I'm not gonna retire. I'm not gonna play golf and fish, for another 20 years. I want to figure that out. I was inspired by Gordon McDonald when he was on with Carey Nieuwhof, who somehow, and you got to dig into this for us, he kind of just had this thing he threw out where he said, I decided to get out of the church leadership at 60 because I had these other things I want to do. And you look at Gordon McDonald now in the last 20 years of his life, and how sad would it have been if you hadn't let go of the high priest of one congregation so that he could go do the other things that God had in store for him.
He's almost had an apostolic run the last 20 years.
I think apostolic's a great word. And we don't really want to look at that, but at a mega church with a lot of campuses, I guess I have an apostolic role, but I think that there is more for me. Doesn't mean I'm not part of Parkview. It just means I think there's more for me that I can do and I can be involved in.
Well, it's just a different role. I am old school. wore a robe when I was a senior pastor, and
Hmm.
but went to a seminary on site. Like, that's unheard of these days. But at Princeton, where I went back in the day, before I was there, like in the 50s and 60s, you couldn't join their faculty until you'd logged 25 years of pastoral ministry experience, and that was the next step. Was you teach other people how to be pastors.
Really?
It's the
Yeah.
apostolic move. That was the old Presbyterian model. Go do your time, and then you can teach people about it, but
Yeah.
not just some theory of books and things. So
Right.
I think people are discovering that, though, that there is this other role, and it's not different. And the timing, people will listen to this and think William's trying to talk me into retiring sooner rather than like, no, no. You mentioned Kenton, man. That timeline moved around. It was like nailing Jello to a wall to get that timeline.
Exactly.
It just
Yeah.
and the timeline of Parkview has moved and shifted over the
Yep.
years. You mentioned Brett Favre, and this is risky because it's December and there's a lot of football left. But I think
Yeah.
it's funny that Brett Favre's been my illustration forever. And now this year you've got Aaron Rodgers, who kind of got ticked that they drafted a quarterback, and he's found
I
his mojo,
know.
and he's having a killer year.
I know. I
So
know. Yeah.
too close to home for the Bears fans, but
Well, yeah, we don't care what happens at Green Bay. It's just a funny illustration.
the,
I
the,
mean, there's a time and a place
yeah, the
for
timing
all
is
of it.
Lord's, and
Yeah.
you don't have to have it nailed down to have the conversation. I think that's the important thing. So,
And you mentioned something in your interview with Carrie Newhoff, yeah, about the humility thing. And it's hard for a guy who does public speaking, everyone's, worst nightmare, and that's what we do, and we do it on behalf of God. It's hard for us to find the humility to be able to step back. But I would just encourage everybody on here, the guys the men and women in leadership who couldn't find the humility to say, you know what, I might be over the hill. They're the ones that have blown everything up, and either that or somebody had to force them out, and it was just devastating on the church. So have the humility to have the people around you that you can ask the hard questions of.
yeah, well, and that's where we're trying to be this Sherpa up a mountain, just kind of show you the way.
Hmm.
You've got to do the summiting. I'm not going to do it for you, but
Yeah.
I have been up the hill and I can show you where the potholes are and that sort of thing. And one place that I think people
So do you
are,
think I can get a job at Princeton?
yeah,
I'm thinking that might be
use you.
probably never would happen. Yeah.
Heck,
Okay.
they could use you, believe me. Uh,
They could.
yeah. Well, so one area that I just want to touch on as we round things out in humility, and this really didn't have anything to do with you or Parkview, but a lot of people that are in leadership right now, I'm yet to meet the pastor who says, you know what I want to do? I'm 55 years old. I'm going to spend the last leg of my ministry completely ruining this work I've been trying to pour my life into.
Yeah.
I'm going to blow it up.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay
Yeah.
too long. But one of the lies of the enemy is that you can't ask for financial help from your board, because a lot of
Mm.
people live like the pastoral life is kind of a hand to mouth life. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what size church or what it's just more zeros if you make, more people, more, it's
Yeah.
all just. So I'm finding in my succession work with boards that if there is a way to gracefully introduce the idea of the board, look, the only thing that's keeping this from happening is financial constraint. The board's
Yeah.
like, well, that's easy. We can't let this screw up because that's going to be way more expensive than paying the pastor a little bit more for a period of time. And I
Hmm.
would just encourage anybody who's out there wondering, like, I don't even know how to do that. Reach out to me, reach out to our team. We'll send some resources your way on how to talk to the board, and you're not alone. It's okay to ask for that kind of help. And
I think in most businesses, you walk into the CEO, you walk into the C-suite, and you kind of know what's going on. And when you've been there for a while, there's a severance package. There's something that's going to be talked about. It's going to be discussed. And boy, that's just not something that anybody's used to. And almost every one of the guys that I know that has walked away early has been blessed by their church, but they didn't really know it was going to happen until the end. They just kind of got down to the end and they're like, you know what, guys, I'm done. And their board came around them. I think planning ahead can be a really big deal. And I know we're talking to a lot of people who are pastoring churches where they don't have a lot of money and there's not a whole lot of things that they can figure out how to do, I would still really encourage you to talk to your board, have open conversations about when this might happen, what might this look like. The value of compound interest. I heard you say this on that interview as well. I mean, you said go get a financial planner when you're 30 and have the church pay for it. I mean, those kinds of things. If I'll just say it this way, if this church would have stuck a little bit of money back 30 years ago and started doing some things 30 years ago, there wouldn't be any discussion. 30 years of compound interest would be, an awful lot. So now we have to figure out other ways. And if the sooner you get that done, the better. And plus, I would also say there are other things out there. There are other ministries. There's other places that need you. Just don't hang on too long, for God's sake, for the kingdom's sake. Don't hang on too long for a paycheck. I mean, and if there's a very famous secession that I won't mention. The guy was a little bit older than me, and he told me, somebody came to me and said, "Hey, if you could walk away right now, would you?" And he said, "I would." He had the guy on staff. He said, "I would." And so that person went to their board and said, "Hey, you know what? He's probably ready to do this. Let's make some things happen." And they did. And he stepped down, and the secession happened, and the place is going great. And it's really about dialogue. It's about dialogue for a pastor within yourself. Where do you find your self-worth? Because I know when I walk away from here and nobody's asking me to preach anywhere, and all of my identity is wrapped up in this thing that I've been doing and it's not there anymore, I know that's going to be hard. I'm going to accept that reality for the sake of the church. I gave 31 years so far, and it'll be many more for this place. I'm just not going to screw it up. That's good.
Well, I think I didn't realize how much board members are willing to try and make those things happen. Yesterday, let's just say we're filming this in December, Auburn fired their football coach, Gus Malzahn, and they fired him knowing that they would then have to pay him $21 million just to let him go. But they realized it was better for their football program to pay him and go on, move on to the next thing. Don't think that people that are willing to do that don't understand the mechanics of a much smaller thing for God's house. I mean,
No, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And, for 21 million, I'll walk away.
Oh, is that the number? Okay, let me get that.
Yeah, I think that's my number. When you talk to my board, let them know that.
Yeah, we'll put that on the agenda.
I've got a great eldership. I'm not worried about this process.
They're godly guys, and they're a hoot.
But we've been talking about it already for like several years. If you get down to, go back to Roger, I don't know how long they've been talking about it at Chandler, but you get to 62, 63, and all of a sudden one day you just walk in the elders and go, "I think I'm done. I can't push the rock up the hill anymore." They're going to just be wide-eyed and not have any idea what to do. It's much better to be having the conversations along the way. What do you think? How's it looking? What's your family situation like? That's quirky for me because I don't have any family that live here. I mean, you start looking at some realities and start asking those questions and having those conversations.
It's so true, Tim. And anybody out there who's embarrassed to have that conversation with the board, you're going to come off as a stronger leader for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Because your board people are thinking about it, whether you know it or not. They are.
Yeah.
And they're afraid to bring it up because you might be their spiritual father. You might be that person who led them to Jesus. And man, I can't bring that up to pastor, but I guarantee you'll come off better. So who knows when we'll be doing a wow, your succession went so well. Who knows when you will have succeeded?
Someday I'm going to succeed. I promise you.
One day you'll succeed. But it's a real honor to get to walk alongside you on this long path that we're still figuring out. And
thank you,
really
my friend.
Appreciate you being gracious enough to take time and frankly be honest with us about a process that you're not through yet and don't know.
No. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Well,
couldn't do without you.
And thanks to all of you who are listening. This is a developing conversation. Every year we learn a little bit more about it. One thing we learned last year is don't release a new book during a pandemic. So our
I did
updated
that too.
version. Yeah, our updated version next came out last year with very little fanfare. You'll hear more about it this spring, but you can go to nextpastor.com and find that. And of course, if you want show notes and links to Parkview and all the great things that are going on there, just go to vandercast.com and give us your email. We'll put you on a list that won't beat you up with offers for Ginsu knives, but just gives you the show notes. So yeah, Tim, thanks for being with us.
$21 million. 21. That's awesome.
It.
Yeah.
Great to be with you, all of you. Hang in there. This too will pass.
Yeah.